Using sunlight to power our homes sounds pretty appealing. Today, we're going to talk with several homeowners who have installed solar panels on their homes and also with a local installer. Hi, I'm Beth Brockett with the Brockett Homes team at Rule & Rule Realtors. More and more homes in our market area are equipped with solar panels. This is a trend that seems to be expanding, and I thought it would be interesting to learn more about solar energy and how residential homeowners are benefiting from sun-powered energy. According to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, beginning in 2014, the cost of solar panels dropped nearly 50%. Pew Research Center's October 2019 survey showed that while just 6% of homeowners have installed solar panels, 46% say they've given consideration to that kind of installation. The reasons why? The top two reasons were to save energy costs and to help with the environment. Tom and Sue Abbot moved a few years ago to Cedar Rapids from sunny California. Tom's agreed to talk with us with his experience in having solar panels installed on his southwest Cedar Rapids home.
When we used to live in California, we had a second home in Henderson, Nevada. And after about a year there, because it's really sunny there most of the time, we decided that we'd put some solar up there to try to help alleviate some of the cost in the summer, because when it's 115 degrees, there were 2 units heating the house or cooling the house that we had there. We decided to see if we could offset that bit. So we investigated it then and put it in there. And then after we moved here, we thought we'd do it again. And it didn't hurt that they had 30% federal credit and a 15% state credit at the time. And it's almost like getting it for half price.
Oh,
and so that made it, pretty attractive to do. Plus, costs aren't as expensive as they were when we did the house. And all I had to do was fill out a form with some information, and they kind of took it from there. So I didn't really have to do a lot, but there is some stuff you have to do with we have a line you have to do with them, because they end up having to be here to manage the tie-in activities. Whoever you get that to do the work, make sure they're very thorough up front with how they're going to install it. And that was really the way we decided on using the company that we did, because we had there was 2 vendors at the home show, and we had them both come out, scope it out, give us an estimate. And it really didn't come down to who was cheaper. They were pretty close. It was the detail on the one company that ended up doing the work, on how thorough they were. Because when they came, they went and measured everything, figured out what they do. They went up into the attic, they went up in the garage attic, and they looked at it in pretty good detail. So when they got done, I knew that the way they were going to tie it all together, there wouldn't be anything outside. You look outside at the panels, you see panels up on the main roof, you see panels on the garage, and you can't tell how they link together. And they did that all internal, and they came out of the side of the garage and ran it over to where the electric meter is to do that. So it's really clean.
Lisa Henderson is a former utility employee. She got interested in solar power when she was responsible for renewable energy programs. Today, she has a solar array on the rooftop of her garage.
Well, actually, I was working for the utility at the time that we installed the solar panels, and working with a lot of customers who wanted to put solar on their house as well. So I had done a lot of research, knew how the process worked to work with a utility, and finally just decided that it was time for us to install solar on our own house. I think that probably my best advice when you're talking about research is to work with the solar installers. And I would always advise working with numerous solar installers, because that's where you're going to learn. They're the ones, it's new, they're going to be the ones that are going to be on the edge of what new information's out there, what new solar panels are out there. So I would recommend just working with multiple dealers. Find one that you are comfortable with, and one that has answered all your questions and makes you comfortable.
Well, we're here at Moxie Solar today, and we have Julian Van der Velde, and he has been gracious enough to answer some questions about solar that you might have and a little bit about the industry. So thanks so much, Julian, for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm happy you guys will make it down.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your title. I think you just got a new title recently.
Yeah, I've been with Moxie for a couple of years now, and was recently promoted from market president of the Midwest up to vice president of sales. So a little bit more oversight over what is becoming now a national brand in Moxie.
Oh, cool. Well, that's great. We're glad to have the growth. So we'll talk about that a little bit in some of my questions. So, well, I do have a few questions that I wanted to ask you. So if you can just tell us a little bit, explain how solar works. I'm sure, we hear about it, but we don't necessarily know exactly how it works.
Sure. So there's typically two different types of systems that we have. A lot of it is based on your utility company and the way that they handle solar. But we have both a grid-tied system and then also a hybrid system. So a grid-tied system, we've got the solar panels on the roof, we've got an inverter that converts the direct current electricity to alternating current, and then effectively it gets used in your house, and you kind of think of your house as like a bathtub. When it fills up with power to the point that the solar is producing more than the house can use, the excess spills out back into the electrical grid, and so you get credited for the energy that goes back to the grid by your utility company. In a hybrid system, we attach a battery into that system so that the excess power first flows to the battery instead of to the grid. So you kind of save a little bit more of your own power, but if you do then need that extra power, during a power outage or storm conditions or something like that, the battery holds, an extra bathtub's worth of water, if you will, to push back into your house.
Okay, that's cool. I guess that's news to me. I didn't know that that batteries could be used to store. So how long has that technology been being used regularly?
Regularly, it's fairly new. The battery technology really has been evolving rather swiftly. It kind of saw a boom with lithium-ion technology. Everybody kind of knows the Tesla, right? They have the cars, they have the power packs, which are the big industrial ones, and then the Tesla Powerwall, which is a smaller version, but it's all the same lithium-ion cells. So we are both a Tesla Powerwall distributor or installer, and also a Generac power cell installer.
Okay, well that's super interesting. I was wondering, how does a homeowner know if their home is particularly, are there some homes that it just doesn't make sense to use solar, and others that are a really good prospect for that?
For the most part, if your house uses electricity, you're a good candidate for solar in one spectrum or another. The effectiveness of solar has to do primarily with the direct sunlight that you get. So while solar as a whole works in terms of the long-term effects in almost any conditions, ideally we'd like to see houses and rooftops particularly where you have less shading from trees, where you have a more southern exposure. But really, as long as you're able to absorb sunlight, as long as you've got light hitting the roof in some capacity, your solar will function if it's properly installed.
Okay, and what's the process for a homeowner? How would they get started, and what's the kind of the time frame from thinking about it to getting it installed?
Sure. So there's a lot that goes into a solar installation. It is a construction project at the end of the day. So, if you take it from the time that you sign up with us, it's usually about a 60 to 90 day process from the time you actually begin to the time that your solar is turned on. A lot of that is regulatory, so we're going to start by actually sizing up the system, having a consultation, educating the customer, showing them how solar works, how much they need, dictating kind of the way that their solar looks on their house and doing the design work. After that, we go through a design and engineering phase. We apply for interconnection with the utility, and once the interconnection process has started, then there's kind of a waiting period where the utility company has to give the okay for us to move forward electrically, and whoever is kind of in charge of zoning, whether it be the city or the county, has to give their blessing for us to move forward from a permitting perspective. We come out and install the actual array, and then those same people that gave us the go-ahead to build it have to come back out and inspect it to see that we did what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it. Once they've filed all the paperwork and they've agreed that we did things the right way, come out, flip the switch, turn on the monitoring app, and from that point on, you're kind of on your own.
So you take care of those things for the homeowner as far as the utility connection and anything with the city, and that's all something you guys do?
Yeah, Moxie is an entirely turnkey service, so we take everything from the initial consultation, the design and engineering, the interconnection. We apply for state or utility level incentives as well if they're applicable.
Okay.
We run through the entire construction process. We use Moxie employed crews and master electricians and the whole 9 yards. And then after the installation, our site and service department also maintains all of of the warranties for 25 years as applicable for that particular installation.
What are you seeing for paybacks? For homeowners, depends, I'm sure.
So it's heavily dependent on the utility cost. So for example, a utility that has a lower cost per watt, which is kind of how everything is dictated, is your kilowatt hours or how you're charged for the most part. So utility companies with a lower kilowatt hour cost, you might see a payback time somewhere in the 8 to 10 year range, whereas those with higher or more swiftly rising utility costs, you might see a payback time somewhere in the 3 to 5 year range. So it really depends on the individual house, the efficiency of that solar based on the amount of sunlight that it's getting, and the cost that the utility company is charging.
And as part of the evaluation for the homeowner, is that what you guys do? You meet with the homeowner, kind of ask them questions and give them ideas about whether they should do this hybrid or whether they go with a more standard process? Yep. How do they make those decisions?
So we do help with all of the decision-making processes. One of our big things is we feel like an educated consumer is the best consumer. So our job is to be as much of an educator as possible, to talk to them about their utility company and how it works, to talk to them about solar and how it works, how the two kind of work in tandem, and then we'll actually go through the design process with them and go through the math and the different tools that are used to determine how much a solar array should produce in a given amount of time. So then we can use that to essentially determine what your return on investment should be, how much you should be saving per year. It's all a little bit variable because of the weather. Solar's very weather dependent, but within an acceptable range, we can usually estimate, and Moxie's always been very good about under-promising and over-delivering, being very conservative in our actual estimates so that ideally you wind up with happier customers at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. And so this is something that I'm seeing more and more. I'm out of the Cedar Rapids market and Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and I'm just seeing more and more solar panels on roofs, which is kind of surprising in the Midwest. Do you see that as a growing industry in the Midwest versus some of our sunnier locations in the South and West?
Certainly. I think that the Midwest has some of the best solar incentives in the country, which certainly helps. But aside from that, one of the things that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration is the fact that electricity works better when it's cold. So our systems, we get enough sun in the summer, we get enough sunlight hours that we're really able to build hefty banks of energy, if you will, within the utility that are able to provide for most people through the winter in terms of the monetary aspects of solar. But the cold temperatures that we get help to keep the systems more efficient for a longer period of time. So solar in the Midwest is exploding, it's booming, it's really a growing industry. In fact, everywhere in the country that we're going to, we've gone from just eastern Iowa to now being in 15 states. Every state that we're in is currently a growing market.
Okay, well that was one of my questions, was just how that industry is going. What about any emerging technologies? Is the battery operating, saving system, the newest thing, or what's the newest and latest and greatest in solar?
So the battery system is kind of the big hot button thing right now. Photovoltaics have, to a certain extent, kind of leveled out. The technology gets a little bit better every year. The inverter technology gets a little bit better every year. But all of the energy and the focus right now is really on that battery technology, right? How efficient and how cheap can it get within kind of the market space that it currently inhabits?
Yeah, that seems like a really important thing to help make it all work better if you can, be storing it sometimes. So, well, that sounds great. Anything else you think we should know before we sign off today?
Not really. I think if you want to know more information, just contact Moxie Solar. One of our big things, like I mentioned before, is education. So at the very end of the day, whether you end up going with us, with somebody else, or just not going solar at all, we want you to know the industry inside and out and know the technology inside and out. Because as a young and growing industry, there's a lot that we have to teach everybody. And while it's not right for some people, the people that it is right for, we want them to have all of the proper information to make a well-educated decision.
Well, that's great. That's what we're trying to do here today. So we really appreciate your participating with us.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we have helped people know a little bit more about solar energy and how it can help residential customers. So
Thank you.
Thank you. If you're interested in digging deeper into solar energy as a source of power for your home, I found several helpful resources. AlliantEnergy.com has several short videos about solar energy and some great questions for homeowners to consider as they explore this option. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory.gov has an extensive glossary of terms associated with solar energy. And energy.gov, the Federal Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, is another great resource for articles. Currently, our market isn't necessarily placing additional value on homes with solar panels, so installation from a real estate value perspective should be done more as a personal choice. I'm happy to talk to you more about this, so please feel free to contact me at 319-551-8692 or at brocketthomes@rulehomes.com.